Hello, everybody. Really excited for today's conversation. I'm also excited to be co-hosting today with my very good friend, Saul Lieberman, the co-executive director of the Institute for Political Innovation. Say hello, Saul.
I waved. Sorry, I wasn't
There you
fast
go.
enough
That's
with the
fine.
clicker, but I am here. Good to
Got
see
it.
you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Today, we're honored and privileged to be able to have a conversation with the leaders of a new political organization, Veterans for Political Innovation. Their goal is to increase fair competition in elections. They believe focused electoral reforms led by state-based coalitions can restore the health of our republic, and that veterans can play a very unique and strategic role in realizing these reforms. So Saul and I are going to have a conversation with Todd Connor, Charlinda Scales, and Yinka Folletti, three leaders of this organization. But before we get into that and give them a chance to introduce themselves, I wanted to show a quick video that VPI put out when they launched their organization just a few months ago. Russ, let's go to the video.
This man is the worst. And every one of those rockets might as well have Joe Biden's name written on the side of it.
The current political industry is selling us fear and outrage and division just to achieve their cheap short-term goals. We are tired of these false, heroic promises that lead nowhere. And so that's why we're in the fight to change the system itself. I was one of those strange kids who caught the political bug at a very young age. For many different reasons and many different times in my life, I looked into engaging in politics. And the first thing that almost everyone I spoke with said is, well, Eric, you have to pick a team. And there was just something in me that it didn't sit right because I don't really fully identify with either the red team or the blue team.
People feel so discouraged, so hopeless. They feel the system can never change. So therefore, they don't go out to vote. So part of what we're trying to do with Veterans for Political Innovation is inspire people to say, no, we can actually change the system. And once we change the system, we'll get different results. Veterans have a very special place in our country. Everyone in this country honors what the people who wear the cloth of our country sign up for. And so we have an opportunity as veterans to pull together people from all over the spectrum to get engaged in this process. This isn't about left, it's not about right, it's not about center. It's about the kind of country, the kind of America that we want.
My hopes for Veterans for Political Innovation is that we really move the needle on specific targeted reforms that are going to change the way that we elect our leaders. And it's going to open up for more competition. People will have to run on their thoughts and their ideas, not just by demonizing their opponent. And through competition, we're going to get better results. And then more people who were hesitant to engage in the system, they finally say, well, maybe there is a place for someone like me, and maybe I don't have to choose a team to actually have a chance.
That's a great video. So I'm really excited. Saul and I are excited to be here today with Todd Connor, who is the CEO and co-founder. He's a Navy veteran and the founder of Bunker Labs, as well as the Collective Academy. Todd is joined by Charlinda Scales, who's a board member at VIP. She's an Air Force veteran and founder and CEO of Mutt's Sauce, as well as Yinka Folletti, who's the board president. He's an Army veteran, and as the video mentioned, ran for Missouri Secretary of State. He's also the former executive director of Forward Through Ferguson. So, Todd, Charlinda, Yinka, welcome. Was hoping you could tell us a little bit about VPI. How did it get started? Tell us also a little bit about yourselves and how your personal journey for getting involved in this organization and this mission.
That's great. Thank you, John. And I just want to say thanks to all of you who are on this call. I see many friends and partners who are in the fight with us. I see you, Henry and Josh and Megan Everett, Brendan O'Brien, Kevin Miller, some other folks. I better stop now so I don't miss anyone. But it's a privilege to be with you and really to be in this Zoom meeting with like-hearted and like-minded people who I think have arrived, regardless of our paths, at the same conclusion, which is our politics are not sustainable. And I hold this as a deep patriotic mission that whatever social capital I've accrued throughout what I've been doing the last 15 years, I feel compelled to deploy towards this work of democracy stabilization. And I think you are the good guys and the good gals for being on this call, trying to have the same conversation about how do we just restore some semblance of sanity. I'll just say this, happy Veterans Day to those of you that served. If you would, just raise your hand or give us some indication that you wore the uniform. Doug, Alan, thank you. Others, we're gonna mark Veterans Day this week, November 11th, as we do every year. We're gonna thank veterans for their service. And the question I'll be asking veterans is, what are you doing now to continue your service? And your service is not done. And veterans remain one of the last respected constituents in this country. When we're seeing other professions sort of lose respect, we've lost respect for a lot of elected officials. We're losing respect for judges. We're losing respect for public health officials, none of which I think is a good thing. But veterans remain trusted agents in our communities. And so how do we deploy that earned status of trusted leader in our community to lead in this moment where citizens are distraught? And frankly, most people are too busy just trying to put food on the table to think about the systemic forces at play in our political system that have put it in this perilous place. So anyway, I'm excited to be with you. I want to ask Charlinda and Yinka if you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll get. I jumped ahead. I know I went deep. We're supposed to. We weren't there yet.
No, you're doing fine. You're all good.
Charlinda, why don't you tell everyone the amazing things that you're doing?
Well,
why you're here.
I want to say thank you for the invitation, Todd and John and Saul. It's an honor to be with VPI. I started out a member of Bunker Labs, so that's how I got to know Todd, is his leadership with Bunker Labs. I truly admire, and I love the term like-hearted, so I probably overused that term, but it's like the theme of all the decision making that I have right now at this point in my life. Surround yourself with like-hearted people. They don't all have to make the same decisions as you or think exactly like you, but if their heart is in the same place like Todd's is, he's like, you need me, I got you. And that's why I joined the board of VPI, because I could see where he was coming from with this goal of not just educating people on a new concept, but also just gathering up those like-hearted people that want to make an impact in this country that we love so much. As a veteran entrepreneur, I do see entrepreneurship as continued service to our country. I'm also a new mom and I live in Ohio. So there were a lot of things in my life that were lining up that made something like this very important, not only professionally, but personally. So that's why I'm here and that's why I'm involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Yinka, you want to add a few words?
Surely. First, again, thank you, John, Saul, for hosting us. I'm really excited to just be part of the board team leading this organization. As Todd mentioned, I ran for Secretary of State. I was the Democratic nominee in this 2020 cycle. And we raised a tremendous amount of money. We campaigned all over the state. We first-time candidate. We did the most in a COVID environment. And I'm not the Secretary of State of Missouri today, so you know what happened ultimately. But that 21-month journey taught me a lot about our politics, our system, how it's broken, and what needs to be fixed. And I got a front row seat into just how broken it is. And so after the election, Eric Bronner, who couldn't join us today. He's a co-founder of Veterans for Political Innovation. And Eric is a good friend, lives here in St. Louis with me, and asked me to consider joining this board and really explain to me what he's trying to do and why. And as I considered whether to jump in the fray, again, you all know that Missouri has a Senate race going on this year, or to do something that would tackle these issues at a more systemic level, I realize that the best use of my time and talent is not in this season is not to be a candidate again, but to fix this broken system, to help fix it. Because even when we send good candidates in, if they go into a broken system, you're still going to get bad results. And so that's how I got engaged. That's why I'm involved. And I'm really excited to engage with you all today.
Great. It's great to have you. I want to ask one more question, and I want to turn it over to you, Saul. So almost every veteran I've ever spoken with talks about this unique experience in the military of people, team building a team of people who would literally give their lives for one another, and building these teams out of men and women who come from all different backgrounds, have all different ideologies, beliefs, politics, cultures. And I wanted to ask you, is that something you're looking to tap into, that uniquely military experience of creating with the diversity of America and building and team building? Is that something that can be tapped into, can be shared? Because the political arena, all the message that we get morning, noon, and night is that you can't build with people you disagree with. You can't build with people that share different ideologies with you. So in launching VPI, are you kind of thinking about bringing that team building experience into the political arena?
Yeah, not only are we, John, but I mean, it's core to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
I have a belief, and I know Yinka and Charlinda and Eric Bronner share this belief, as do many on this call, that everyone can be great when put in the right environment. And the military is a blessing because it puts you in an environment where you are surrounded by people with whom there's a higher purpose, there's a higher mission, and there isn't time for ideological division when you are sort of locked arms, and facing a shared threat, when you are or locked arms and serving a shared love, which is your country. And so there's a lot to be learned from how the military operates itself, and then for how the veteran community organizes itself. And as Charlinda mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of lessons learned for how we started and scaled Bunker Labs into an organization that's in 42 different cities. Historically, in the veteran community, you've seen strong chapter-based organizations. That's the legacy of the American Legion, the VFW. All of these organizations historically were organized as chapter-based organizations around shared, strong national values. And those values are driven around service, patriotism, friendship, doing the right thing, and being problem solvers. And so in this day and age, there's two things that we're trying to solve for, just to be explicit. One is we want to implement, final five voting. We want to implement changes to our primary election system and our general election systems that we think unlock innovation and create renewed competition and give voters more choices. That's mission number one.
Right.
But mission number two is to create a place for veterans to continue to serve. And veterans are less interested in being partisan actors. They're exhausted, as am I, as are many of you, by sort of Twitter fights and snark and who gets to be the loudest, most outrageous person on cable news. That is not what most veterans are interested in. But veterans do understand that the challenges that we face are political. So they are seeking places, a platform to be politically engaged without having to be partisanly engaged.
Interesting.
And that's really what Veterans for Political Innovation is here to be, is to create that platform for veterans to say, look, your option does not just have to be ignore the noise and don't do anything. We need you engaged. We need you talking and being and creating, reputational safety for elected officials and for the public to say, look, these issues matter, and as a veteran, they matter. And so that creating that home for veterans is very important. And the last thing I'll just say on this is 50% of military veterans are registered independents.
Right.
They're solutions oriented. And so, they get frustrated by the current debate of like, it's this or that. It's this kind of binary thinking. And what we're really looking for is solutions. And so, yeah, all those things come to bear, John, for the culture that we're creating as an organization and for how we want to push forward.
That's
Absolutely.
great.
I don't know, Yinka and Charlene, if you'd add anything on that, about the heart of the veteran.
Say specific to like the veteran entrepreneur, leadership is influence, right? So our ability to influence people is, I think, a little bit enhanced from our military service. We know that there are times when we've had to push past our feelings or push past the situation, like you said, to get the job done. And you also have to tell your troops or your brother, your sister, like, I know you're tired. I know you want to go home, but we have got to do this. But imagine that mindset in someone who wants to change their country for the better. And I think that veteran entrepreneurs, I've seen several of them on the news lately. They're running for office in different states. And I love this wave because they are realizing their power. They're realizing their gift. And the more that we can convince them to do that and give them the tools to be successful, that's what it's going to take, is kind of unlocking them and saying, like, you have what it takes. If even one of you in your state decides to do this, you're going to make a big difference.
And John, or Yinka, I don't know if you want to add, I just want to say this about our reform movement, and Yinka, maybe you can chime in on this too. Movements need leaders. Having a faceless movement is an incredibly difficult thing to engineer. So the question for us becomes, who's gonna be the face of this movement? And we are committed that the face of this movement look like small business owners who wore the uniform and live in communities across this country. People like Yinka, people like Charlinda, people like Megan Smith and others on this call, Henry and Josh, right? So we need leaders to be the messengers. And I think the military community, that is who we still trust. That is who we still listen to. That is who has demonstrated, not through words, but through actions, that they are willing to put things above themselves. And so that virtue, that demonstrated moral commitment to a higher purpose, is something that we need right now, and we are hungry for. People are desperate for leadership. We don't fully appreciate the vacuum that we're living in until we see indicators of something that's different. And I think that's a powerful role that veterans can play, and that I think the country is hungry for and looking for.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think another component to why I think veterans can be compelling carriers of this message and this vision, and compelling convincers, is that veterans are folks who have signed a blank check for this country, who said, yes, I will miss the birth of my first child. Yes, I will miss my anniversary. Yes, I will miss my children's birthdays. And yes, I may even lose a limb or two. Or yes, I may lose it all. And I think veterans, because of that bent, because of that depth of commitment to this country, have just an ideal that places country over party. And so I think that helps us uniquely be in a position to help carry this in a credible way, where the American people know that these are people who just simply love the country and want to see the country do well. And ironically, these are the very same people who deployed to other countries like Iraq, like Kuwait, like Afghanistan, to help those countries realize democracy and freedom and liberty and all of the ideals that this country says it stands for and espouses. And so I think all of those things really help veterans be compelling carriers of this message.
Right. Saul, you have a question?
Sure. Hey, Todd. Hey, Yinka. Hey, Charlene.
Hey, Saul.
Hey, everybody. So I'm a former journalist back in the day, and so my head often goes to the who, what, where, when, why, how stuff. And so we got the who with you wonderful people. We got the what with, the reform of Final Five voting, but also just the, the engagement and mobilization of veterans, because it should be done to work like this. Where here, the United States, and the why, I think all of us on this call bring our own reasons why, the things that we've seen in the last 9 months, the last 4 years, the last 40 years for many of us. So if I can enter that category of reflection, talk to us about the how. I know some of this, obviously, but you all are tacticians. You know how to get from A to B and do it in the best possible way. So talk to us about how.
Yeah, that's awesome, Sol. And Sol, I just want to say publicly, it's been such an amazing leader and mentor, board member of Veterans for Political Innovation, but just partner in so many respects. So, frankly, it's the how that excites me. I am action oriented, and so is Charlinda, and so is Yinka, and so is our team. I am not interested in waxing poetic about these issues. I want to get it done. And so that is an ethos that cuts deep to who we are as an organization. Our organizational values speak to getting it done. Which, look, success for us is we get these election innovations implemented in 6, 8, 10 states. You shift the nature of what the United States Senate does and how it operates. You start sort of a groundswell, right? And this is the work that all of you are doing as well, right? We push this work nationally and we get it done. And our mission is like to turn this organization off if and when we have election competition back in our politics. That's it. That's the mission. We'll get it done. We'll shut her down. I mean, that is sort of how we think about it. But so let's talk for a minute about the how, because the how is important. And the how is how we're going to be ultimately successful. We all do this like as a second, third, fourth, fifth career. We do it not because we're trying to earn some public stature, but because, again, we want to see some things get done. So we're focusing at a state-based level because that's where the action is, right? And I'm going to say some things that are redundant to many of you on this call, but you have states that, make decisions about how to conduct their elections through legislative action, and then other states do it through ballot initiative. So in states where we play in terms of ballot initiative, we're going to organize military veterans and their supporters, spouses and supporters, to collect signatures, advance messaging, get in front of public influencers, cut past the partisan noise. We're going to lean on business owners and military veterans, not known political actors, to elevate the issues and say, look, this is a reasonable, smart, and good thing to do. It's a patriotic thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Help get signatures, get the measures on the ballot, and be successful that way. In states where we're focusing on legislative action, we're going to get in front of elected officials, and we have unique opportunities to do that. And we've already seen this play out in states, including Wisconsin and others, where veterans can sit down with military veterans who are in office and have a different kind of a conversation,
right?
Where they are open to thinking about these issues where they may not have considered them before. But for us to come not as lobbyists, but as people who served, wore the uniform, and are returning home, particularly when we identify veterans who come from the districts and sit down with their own elected officials and say, look, I want you to care about these issues because I'm worried about polarization and I'm worried about the future of democracy. So we'll be focused at a state-based level. We're going to target states, this is important for everyone on this call, where there is on-the-ground infrastructure already at work in those states. We are never, VPI, Veterans for Political Innovation, is never going to be the first to fight in the state. We're going to look for state-based campaign partners who are strong, established, operating with the strategy. And what we want to do is show up and say, how do we best affect what you are doing here in this state, either through ballot initiative or through legislative action? And so we want Veterans for Political Innovation never to go it alone, but always to be a strategic support where there is strong state-based efforts. And we're going to make those decisions about where to show up in concert with our organizational partners, many of whom are on this call. And then when we do show up, we're going to leverage veterans as leaders for op-eds, for messaging, to sit down with other military veterans who are in office. We're going to help reach out to the business community, and we have unique pathways to doing that. Because the thing that's interesting about the veteran community, if you think of it like this, and I say this all the time, it's like the most powerful alumni network in this country. It is a preferred network. If you ask me, hey, Todd Connor, there's 3 people that want to sit down with you. One went to Northwestern, one got their MBA at the University of Chicago, which is where you went, and then a third person just got out of the Air Force. Like, there's no question in my mind that I'm talking first to the person that was in the Air Force, not a doubt. And that is how most military veterans are built. And so we are the most powerful alumni network. We just don't have an alumni association. But if we organize ourselves and play on that preferred status to get in front of the right people, we think that we can really influence hearts and minds around these issues of election innovation, and take people from not paying attention to aware, and then finally to being in full support. And we think the business community and the veteran business community in particular can be a strong conduit for that. So my hope is that the state-based partners say, man, thank God VPI showed up, because we couldn't have gotten done the big things if they were not sort of at our side, helping do things that we could not have otherwise done ourselves.
Let me just one follow-up. Is that okay, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, and I know Todd will appreciate this question, because we both think like this and it keeps us up at night. You know, you map out how you're going to win, how you're going to succeed, but you also think about how you're going to fail. What are the blockers? What are the things that are going to make your life hard? Yinka and Charlinda, for you as board members as well, like, what are the things that you know you need to obviate, mitigate, get ahead of, that give you concern? Some of it you can't control, obviously, but some of it you can think strategically about.
I definitely got a couple of thoughts. I'll invite Charlinda and Yinka to share theirs. I'll say internal organizationally is that we lose focus on what it is that we're trying to do. That we adopt a broader set of issues that we're engaged in. We are not going to do that. You know, there's a lot of issues that I'm interested in personally, right? That, you know, money in politics and gerrymandering, other things. We're going to stay laser focused on the issue reforms that we think, frankly, have not yet been partisanly framed. And so focus is going to be a discipline that is required of us to be successful. Because the risk factor, I think, is that it gets partisanly framed. And we really, you know, even though, you know, Todd Connor has a political identity and other people on our team have different political identities, we just really don't want this to get subsumed as a partisan Trojan horse for anything. It really is about repairing the system. And so, you know, that's a fear of mine, and we have to be thoughtful about how we show up and who we show up with to make sure that gets done. And then the final thing is just that we are, you know, representative of the veteran community that we serve. I mean, we just have to, this has to look like a people-powered movement, something that's happening in communities. It emanates from the Midwest where we live. And so, you know, and then all the usual nonprofit things of like running a good organization, fundraising, making sure you've got the right leaders, the right values. But, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, I've made so many mistakes in prior lives that I really feel like building VPI is just an opportunity to get it right out of the gate on so many things. And having people like Yinka and Charlinda, who are just experienced operators, know what they're doing, a seasoned board of like-hearted people. I mean, that's the stuff that just makes me excited, because I really feel like we're doing this right. And I say that, you know, with credit to Josh and Henry and other people that are on the ground in states helping us get this done. But yeah, you know, Yinka, Charlinda, risk factors that you would see?
Yeah, so you've identified one, Todd, a very important one, and mission creep. You know, we just have to be very careful to stay focused. And, you know, when you're building out a national organization and you're in different states, you know, folks could say, hey, come help us do this. We'd love to leverage your credibility to help us do that. And so we just got to continue to stay focused on these reforms that we're targeting. You know, as board chair and as someone who just ran for statewide office, you know, the thing I think about all the time is resources, is ensuring that we have the resources to do this in a way that really moves the needle. I mean, we don't just want to affect change on the margins. We want to affect change systemically throughout this country. And so building those coalitions, bringing along partners like Institute for Political Innovation, IPI, and others to help us in terms of resourcing and generating all of that we need to do this work. That's what keeps me up at night.
I would just add just staying focused on that singular goal. I would consider myself, I don't know, like a sleeper agent. Sounds like. But I have a razor focus on the veteran entrepreneur. I really do. And if people could see all the movement, they'd probably be like, what the heck? She's everywhere. She's doing everything. Because I think that there's power in first unlocking people and then uplifting them. So I have to do the work at the ground level to kind of open the eyes of some of these veteran entrepreneurs to let them know their power. And then using these platforms like VPI to uplift them in their communities and say, okay, this is what you can do in Wisconsin. This is what you can do in these different states. But at different levels, like last week, I was at the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State Frank LaRose in Ohio is a veteran, and he's one of the first veterans we've had in a while in that position. But in true sleeper agent form, I wanted to make sure that he knew that I was available. I spent a lot of time wasting time with this mentality of why me? I mean, Todd's qualified and Yinka's qualified, and I'm just this little old mom in Ohio, you know. but there's moms out there who need someone to relate to. There's pandemic parents. I'm a pandemic parent, so they're trying to figure out what they can do in this date and time, and who can they relate to. So instead of wasting time saying why me, you go why not, and who else can I bring along with me. So that's been my focus. I just want to make sure that we meet people where they are, that we're not above them, that we are beside them in this fight, and that we convey that singular message.
Let me see one final thing, and this will be like, I don't want this to sound controversial, but I'll say it because I think it's just spirit transparency.
We like controversial here at Open Primaries.
Yeah, like, okay, good. I mean, I think you've got to decide on some really guttural level who you are here to serve. And I think the risk in the reform community is that we become an insular community. We compete amongst ourselves, we wordsmith amongst ourselves, and we lose sight of the general public who needs to ultimately be engaged in this fight. You know, if given the choice to be relevant among my reform peers or relevant among military veterans, I'm always going to choose to be relevant among military veterans. And so I say that because, you know, I challenge people with mission statements and all this stuff that, look, when the rubber hits the road at some point, do you do the right thing? And the right thing for us has to be being relevant and needed amongst the military community, and frankly, not the people on this call. I mean, I say that to be extreme, but because we have to really stay centered on and for whom it is here that we are doing this work. And I think we all have a shared mission, but I never want us to confuse, this is me to my organization, being, you know, belonging in whatever spaces that we aspire to belong in with like meeting our mission. Because too many people, and this is part of the affliction of the current political system, too many people have confused their identity and belonging with like doing the right thing. And they are not the same. So we need to stay laser focused, not be in pursuit of accolades or invitations or keynote speeches, but just be focused on the military veteran community and how they can activate themselves as citizens so that we can get some good stuff done and frankly go away when it's all done. I mean, that is kind of the mission. There's not a grander play. So I just offer that to say we've got to, I think, and my hope for VPI and the veteran community is that we can lead with some of that moral clarity when we show up in communities and places where, frankly, that in and of itself looks a little bit different from who we see entering and leading in our political spaces, right? Just that these people show up and they are genuinely trying to do something that is bigger than their own egos. That is a lesson that I think will win us some credibility and be a welcome reminder of what has seems to be lost in our country today.
Great. All right, we're now going to open it up to your questions. Just a quick reminder, if you want to ask a question of the VPI team and or Saul or myself, just type your name, your state, and a one-sentence summary of your question. Put it right in the chat. And then Saul or I will call on you, and then you will take yourself off mute and ask the question. So our first question comes from Michael Horowitz, who has a question about coalition work. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi there. I'm in Michigan, because I didn't put that in. I think my question is longer than one sentence, but I have seemingly been getting emails and data from a number of organizations that seem to have some similar agenda. Now, not the veterans piece of it. And I'm just curious about what organizations you're working with, what coalitions you're building. I did hear about statewide support, but I'd just like to hear about other organizations that you're working with.
You bet. So there are a few organizations that we're working with on the reform side. I mean, IPI, the Institute for Political Innovation, is the big one. I would consider Open Primaries a partner. I would consider Democracy Found, Wisconsin-based organization, a partner. And like I said, in the states that we're going to go into, we'll seek state-based partners with whom we can partner. I am not, and this I come at this with a bias, having started and grown a veteran service organization. I'm going to want to minimize time on MOUs and logo swaps and things like that. I have a bias of feeling like those activities become more time consuming than is valuable. And that, like, if we're all relevant on the ground doing things, let's just show up and do the work together. And then, like, and if the public needs to know about it, we can let them know. But if they don't need to know about it, that's fine too. And so that's how we'll operate, is trying to, partner with folks where it's helpful, but do it in the spirit of the work and not so much like the brand acknowledgement of both ways. Cause I just think you can lose a lot of time in that. So that's a bias I hold, and I'll own that. I think the bigger thing with partnership, frankly, for us, is we need partnership in the reform community, but more relevant to us are partnerships in the veteran community. We have to have partnership with the American Legion, with the VFW, with Team RWB, with Bunker Labs, with Mission Continues, with a whole bunch of organizations, America's Warrior Partnership, a whole bunch of organizations that many of you on this call have not heard of. I will be, 80% of my energy when it comes to partnerships is going to be focused on veteran partnerships, because that's the channel through which we're going to reach the audience that we want to activate. A finite amount of time will be spent, if I have it right, I think, on the reform side of partnerships. But here's what I'd say to all of us. It's a challenge in leadership. That's hard to do because the gravitas is going to pull you into more reform-centered, Zoom calls like this, right? So you actually have to fight to sort of not only be in reform-centered spaces, but fight to be in real estate that is veteran-centered, that isn't politically identified, right? That is in local communities, that is in business rooms and things like that. So I hope that's like not a non-answer. Our website does include.
Well, actually, we have a follow-up question to that, which is from Alan in Kansas, who had a question about working with not with reform groups but other veterans groups. Alan, you want to take it away?
That's a good question.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a life member of the VFW, a life member of the American Legion, and I'm also in the political reform space. And I have reached out to multiple states, multiple officers in those organizations, and they just don't touch political. I mean, no matter how nonpartisan, no matter how altruistic the effort, they just do not respond if there's a political bend to it, because they feel they're jeopardizing their 501c3 status. So how are you finding collaborating with those major the multi-state veteran organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question. The big six will touch political issues, advocacy issues, but the way in which they're ever going to get there is usually a bottoms-up approach. And so we've talked to a number of state directors and some consultants that help the big six sort of define their advocacy agenda. And so there is a way to get them to move. And frankly, those legacy organizations, which I distinguish as being different from like the post 9/11 set of organizations that I think most veterans are drawn to, they have historically been strong on Capitol Hill and with advocacy. So I'd love to see them play a role in this, but apart from, because I'm with you, Alan, like it doesn't move as fast as I want it to. I'd like to see it move more with like a top-down approach. They tend to kind of wait to see when state directors have a shared consensus based on what local chapters and members think. So you can get them to move and do things, but you usually have to push at a grassroots kind of push the messaging bottoms up, is at least our experience with some of these organizations. Now, having said all that, I would just say the real strategy for me is just direct to consumer. And I say this as an entrepreneurship. I think in the veteran community, we often overestimate the extent to which you have to get partners to bless anything. And my philosophy has always been skip all that go direct to consumer. I mean, when we were trying to help veterans start businesses, everyone had a lot of agita around how do you get the VA to put your organization's logo in the newsletter. And my thing was always like, who cares? Get to the veterans who want to start businesses, and they'll join you. And then like the VA will catch up later when they realize, oh, that's the real deal. That thing's relevant. I don't, so I have a philosophy of just get to the people that you need to get to, and let the partners play catch up if and when they need to. And that's always been successful for me. And that's how we're going to run this play. I don't know if Yinka, Charlene,
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. I think, yes, it'd be great if the leadership of those organizations, Alan, decided they want to promote and endorse and those kinds of things. But, I see this like a campaign. You've got to knock on doors. And, we said earlier, veterans, 49% of veterans identify as independent, and not just independent in a party sense, but veterans are quite independent thinking. And so even if I'm a member of the American Legion or the VFW, et cetera, if there's an organization and I love what they're about, I'm not going to wait for my leadership to endorse or tell me about it. So I think knocking on doors and going direct to consumer is a winning strategy for us.
All right, we have a number. Oh, go ahead, Charlene. Go ahead.
We do make a lot more progress when we remove the labels. And when you do that, you realize that you are connected to more organizations than you realize. The example I would give is the Miss Veteran America competition. 2016, I was second runner-up. But the top three, we traveled the country, and our sisterhood, once you're in, you're connected to every woman veteran who's ever been a part of the contest or served in that contest. But now you look at that winner for that year. She sits on the board for the Air Force Association, one of the first captains to ever be chosen. All of her peers are 4-star generals. And to know that that's my sister that I could call up on the phone, and her network is now my network. And you go to some of these events, and your sister from 2017 is now sitting on another state's board at the VFW. So you see, like, when you don't think about, let me be connected to VFW or AFA, but let me just be connected to my sister and see how I can help out, you make a lot more progress.
All right, we have a number of questions.
I'm always learning things about Charlinda. I mean, I'm just like, the awards keep coming. It's amazing.
Right.
I'm mad you didn't win, but anyway, we'll get back to that.
A number of questions about Final Five voting. Paula from Minnesota, Rich from Ohio. I'm going to actually turn it over to David in Iowa, who had some questions about kind of your political strategy and ultimate goals. So go ahead, David.
Hey, thanks. It's pretty quick, Todd. I just wanted to clarify. Definition of success would be Final Five votings implemented in X number of states, right? I mean, whether that's 10 or 15, I don't know if it'll ever be 50, but that would be the definition of success. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually just putting a text or chat back in. So I would say 8 states in 4 years, which feels ambitious maybe, but I think that to me scrambles the incentives for the United States Senate, which is pretty awesome. And I think we could do it.
Thanks. That was all I needed.
I think we need like $5 to $10 million to do it. And my argument is to donors is that we're a leverage investment. If you want to maximize your dollar, if you have $10 to spend in political innovation, my argument is put it to the veterans, because they'll stretch the dollar, they'll get unique messaging opportunities, they'll optimize what those dollars can do. So, and I know many of us on this call are in the fundraising game, but that's a little bit of my pitch.
Thanks.
Thanks, David. Great question.
I actually want to throw a curveball question here, and then go back to some audience questions. So this is actually a question for you, Yinka, because I know you were involved in the process that emerged out of the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson. And obviously there's a conversation in the country about racial justice. And I'm wondering, as someone who participated in that very actively, if you see any link between political innovation, changing some of these rules in politics, and our capacity as a country to engage these societal questions, racial justice being one of them, in a more unified way, a less polarized way. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I find it very interesting as someone who's a veteran of that process, how you see the relationship between that and the political innovation work you're doing.
So I think that question is so apropos to the time we are in and the history of this country and the history of the way that voting and electoral engagement has occurred in this country. And when we look at the primary, and this is part of my passion for this work, when we look at the primary and who votes in a primary and how the people who vote in primary elections determine ultimately the choices that the vast majority of Americans get. You heard Todd say at the outset that essentially 10% of Americans got to vote for, the lion's share of our representatives in Congress this past cycle. It's kind of like the Pareto principle used in a very sinister way. I mean, and so what we are doing, this work, ultimately will allow greater representation, not just encourage people who typically do not engage in the political process because they feel the political process is not responsive to their needs. One of the challenges as I was on this 21-month journey to run for Secretary of State, one of the challenges, and quite frankly, for anyone who runs, is how do you get people who typically have been on the sidelines for years, decades, generations, because they feel the process, even if they did vote, would not be responsive to their needs. And so I think this innovation, these set of innovations that we are championing will actually go to ameliorate that, because now you have people understanding that, wait a minute, the person who wins actually has to care about what I care about. The person who wins actually has to care about my plight in life. And so I think this will get people who typically do not feel represented, do not feel heard, and do not engage more excited about engaging the political process. And once the political leaders who ultimately win get in office, it will incentivize them to be more responsive to those folks.
Got it. All right, we're going to go to Paula in Minnesota. Paula, I'm going to let you ask your own question because you have so many on so many different topics. So I'm going to let you freestyle this and take it away and ask whatever you want. Go ahead, Paula.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Paula, you still? Oh yeah, you're on mute.
I'm certainly very interested in this initiative. I've been a representative of independent parties in Minnesota for close to 10 years now. I've run twice for Congress and twice for Senate myself. I'm currently a recruiter for the Legal Marijuana Now Party, which just got major party status in Minnesota. I've worked on a lot of different movements over the years. One of them, probably most relevant, would be ranked choice voting. And of course, Minnesota is probably not a good state to target because of the way our structures are set up right now. We have no citizen referendum, for example, which was probably the best strategic vehicle for moving this kind of initiative. But I'm wondering, we do have a pretty strong ranked choice voting movement in this state, and I'm wondering what your relationship is to that voting method. It's not, not in my opinion, one of the best, but certainly an improvement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Paula. So what we are in favor of and what we're pushing for is final five voting, which is a combination of open primaries and ranked choice voting. We're learning that in certain states, depending on the audience, you can have, some folks prefer to call it instant runoff elections, right? So there's sort of language machinations, and I think all of us are somewhat sensitive to that. We want to use the language that resonates with people. So if it's instant runoff elections, fine. If it's ranked choice voting, fine. The function of what we're trying to do is sort of not different. So we're in support of those things and open primaries. We think the combination of those two things is important. We will, show up and help support things that move us towards that. We'll stay away from things that are beyond that issue set, frankly. So questions around like, do we keep party labels or get rid of them? How do we, invite new parties into the process? I mean, there's a lot of things I have opinions on and like probably am in support of, but organizationally, I think we'll stay focused on just the mission of open primaries and ranked choice voting, and then help advance those things where we can on the ground. The only caution we'll have is if something looks built to be purely partisan out of the gate and it's not going to make progress, then we'll be sort of cautionary in terms of how we show up in those places and just make sure that we're not stepping into any traps unwittingly. But yeah, our intent is to advocate on the ground, and including in Minnesota.
So would Maine be one of the states you might be targeting? They do have ranked choice voting now for their.
Absolutely, they do now. Yeah, we were very active in Maine. In fact, that's a state where we got military veterans who were not really paying attention to the issue. We got in front of them in a unique way and got them engaged and said, "Look, this matters to us. This matters because military veterans are registered independents. They're worried about polarization. They're worried about this country." And we did, in fact, help, I think, turn and convert a couple of votes in Maine that is part of the recent victory, which we're excited about. Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of independence,
thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yinka, Todd, Charlinda, the independents are surprisingly controversial in that this was on The View yesterday. They had this fight on The View where one of the hosts was saying 45% of the country is now independent. It's not just veterans, but there's kind of a broad surge overall. And the other host said, yeah, but those independents tend to vote for Democrats or Republicans, so they're not really independents. It doesn't matter that they register to vote as an independent. They had a whole fight about open primaries. I've never seen this on The View. What is your thinking about the significance of people declaring themselves, specifically veterans, but more generally saying, I'm an independent? What does that mean in your mind?
Well, Charlinda and Yinka and I are going to get together and have a watch party of The View. And see what our reactions are. No, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's an interesting talking point to say that military veterans half of them are registered independents. We aren't, and I think I want to be careful on this because we are not trying to say parties are bad. We are not trying to say leave the Republican Party, leave the Democratic Party. What we are saying is there ought to be more choices. What I am saying is if it's a closed primary system and you can't participate, that's wrong. That's morally wrong. That people that wore the uniform cannot in a functional way come back and participate in our democracy where 86% of what are actually competitive re-election seats are determined by 10% of voters. That's wrong. What we're in the military community, what's interesting is there isn't as much messaging sensitivity. I can go to someone that is a solidly identified Republican, Trump supporter. I can go to someone that's a solidly identified liberal Democrat, AOC supporter, and I can have the same level-headed conversation and say, look, whoever you support, we can all agree it's not working, right? And that is just, frankly, an easy conversation to have in the veteran community, which is, in my view, refreshing. So I don't know that I have an opinion as to whether or not it's good or bad that people are independents. I think people ought to be able to freely express their political identities. I will say this, in the military, we do want a culture of political independence. We do want a culture of, we do not want our military politically identified. That's a dangerous thing for American democracy. So we want to protect the political independence of our United States military. That is core to who we are and what matters to this country. But we do want military veterans to be politically engaged, right? We should not confuse them being professional in uniform with them not having a political opinion. They absolutely have political opinions. Of course they have political opinions. They're the ones that do the hard work and the bidding on behalf of this country. So that story needs to be told. And too often the military community gets hijacked by political actors who stand up and say that they are doing what is in the interest of the troops and all that stuff. We need to own our own voice and not let political actors sort of say what is or what is not patriotism. We get to define what patriotism is. And I think it's a little bit more nuanced when you listen to veterans than when you listen to politicians.
Got it. We had a follow-up question for Charlinda. This is from Kathy Stewart in New York, a question about veteran entrepreneurs. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, thanks, John. Thank you so much. It's so great to have the opportunity to speak to all three of you. Shalinda, I wanted to come back to something you said that I just think is a very, very important principle you were expressing about how you think about organizing among veteran entrepreneurs when you said you want to unlock and uplift and not be above people, but beside them. And I think that's so key. And I wondered what it was like to talk to the veteran entrepreneur community about a substantial political reform like Final Five, and what kind of reactions are you getting? And what are those conversations beginning to look like, maybe building on what Todd was just saying?
Well, I think when it comes to veterans, they're certainly more receptive. I approach it with educating myself and letting them know, like, I'm trying to become a better educated American and veteran, and I'm doing my part to take what I've learned as a veteran entrepreneur and see how I can apply it to like pushing along some of these concepts that sometimes people, when it's something new, especially now, it's a little bit of an uphill climb. But if me and my brothers and sisters in arms, the more that you educate them and the more comfortable they get with talking about it, it makes it a lot easier to talk to the general public about it when there's more of you that understand it and can talk to it. So that's kind of the work that I've been doing is as I learn, I teach, and I tell them, like, if I, I'm from the hills of Tennessee, and, some stuff, you got to break it down into syllables for me. You really got to keep it simple. And because I'm moving 1,000,000 miles an hour for one, and two, my poor brain can sometimes my attention span is just a little quick. So I like the fact that this is a concept that I can understand and get down with. And like Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it yourself. So I want to be able to explain it to people.
You're a great spokeswoman, Charlinda.
Oh, thank you.
All right. If the hour has
you.
sped by, we have one final question from Cesar in Nevada about practical advice to get something going there. I'll turn it over to you, Cesar, and then you will be our final question of the day, and then we'll wrap up. Cesar, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so my question is, more like, let's say that I'm working on a valid initiative here in my state, which is Nevada. How would I go about connecting with somebody from that state and see how we can work together on passing it here locally?
Thanks, Cesar. And absolutely, I'm going to do this. and I think you and I had a little private chat. So Eric Bronner, our founder, is on his way to Nevada to have some meetings. I'm going to get you looped into those. And I'm going to put my email in the chat, todd@v-pi.org. And I gave the website before. Here's my ask of everyone. Please get veterans and supporters, military spouses, even active duty, connect them to our effort. We would like to have leaders identified in all 50 states. We've got a few that are on the call that are actively leading efforts in states like Wisconsin and others, but we would like to have leaders in all 50 states. And so even if we're not going to have a ballot initiative, even if we're not going to sort of push for legislative action, it's helpful to have resources on the ground who are military veterans who are available for media, public engagement, awareness. So I'd like to have 100 leaders, 2 per state, identified within the next 6 months, because I think we can do that quickly, but we need your help to get there. So please help us find folks in Hawaii and Oregon and Florida and all the rest of it. So let's populate the national map. We have a dynamic map on our website, and then let's get active in the states where there's on the ground efforts in those states. And we're really excited about what the potential is here. So Cesar, hope to be with you soon in Nevada. Thanks for what you're doing. It's really important.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the opportunity to connect. Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been a very exciting hour. Thank you very much, Todd, Yinka, Charlinda, for talking about VPI and your mission and your goals. And, you know, on behalf of the Open Primaries movement, we welcome you to the struggle. It's great that there are new groups like yours that are doing such important work and the hard work of recruiting people to lead in this arena. Any last words, Saul, before I wrap it up?
John, can I say one thing before Saul says the final thing, which is I want to thank you. I want to thank Yinka. I want to thank Charlinda and Saul. And I want to thank Kevin, Josh, and Henry and others on this call. But really, I want to thank all of you, because here's what I will tell you. On Veterans Day on Thursday, when we mark and honor the service of military veterans, I can think of nothing more productive to do to honor their service than to restore this democratic system that has become so flawed. That is your patriotic duty. You are doing your patriotic duty. I hope you appreciate the spirit of patriotism that swirls around the work that you are doing. It is hugely important. And so on behalf of the military veterans who are in uniform deployed now, we want to thank you, because it's the work that you're doing to open up elections, reinvite competition, restore democracy, that is what honors their service. That is what honors their sacrifice. So I hope you understand the importance of the work that you're doing. And I just genuinely, citizen to citizen, want to say thank you for what you're doing. It's so important, and veterans everywhere, thank you for it. So over to you.
I cannot follow that, Todd. How about this? How about this? All of you on the call, many of you are already engaged. Wherever you are, make a connection for VPI. You got a friend, you got somebody who's in the Big Six who might be down with this, just make an introduction. All of those scale up very quickly. And we find the conversion rates really solid because these folks are fantastic. So please, let's do that to honor the call today.
Yes, and everybody's going to be getting a follow-up email with a YouTube of today's discussion, as well as the VPI and Open Primaries websites. So you'll have a very convenient inbox tomorrow so that you can spread this conversation and spread these organizations and get people connected to VPI. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Yinka, Charlinda, Todd. You were great. Good luck with everything you're doing, and we will see all of you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Take care. Bye-bye.